All right. It has started recording. Hello, Steve.
Perfect. Hello.
Uh, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome to everyone watching to whatever this is. We are back
Yes.
from break, and I will.
What are you talking about? We didn't take a break. We were just here last
We
weekend.
were just here last weekend.
Yes.
Except that wasn't. It was posted from before or recorded before. Uh, holidays
You're
are
ruining the magic,
It's
man.
just so much magic right here. I'm excited to get back on schedule. I just finished recording a podcast with another friend with the amateur esports stuff, and it was nice to
Nice.
like have it scheduled out days ahead of time, and then to show up, and
Yeah.
then for us to do the thing, just like this, for us to show up and do the thing, and for me not to be in a hotel or in another state or traveling or doing a million different things. I am
Right.
somewhere weird. I am outside in Central Texas, hanging out with
That's not really weird. A lot of people
trees.
go outside.
I don't have a good response to that.
Yeah.
Maybe you know what I had to say. Not enough people go outside. That's my hot take, man.
Could be.
That's my after school specials. More people need to go outside. But anyways, it's been a good day. I'm glad to be back on more of a regular schedule of stuff. Um,
Yeah, it's good.
but just before I wanted to hit start recording because we're having a little bit of a chat, and you were asking me about something. We had talked about
Oh,
previously about the leveling up in life, or the hitting the
yeah. I hate to say it like that. I feel like that sounds a little pretentious, but
I literally
I
just
don't know.
came from an episode of talking about an amateur esports League of Legends podcast.
Yeah.
So nothing you can say is gonna be more nerdy or more weird
Well,
than
not nerdy,
than.
but I just feel like that's
But
yeah. I mean, if you take it in the context of video games, like
well, it
it's kind
does
of fun and nerdy, but
the type
it
of
can kind of sound a little pretentious.
the
Also,
type of
before you get into
realization.
that,
Yeah,
you should
sorry.
plug your esports thing.
Oh yeah,
Where can people find you?
where can people find me? If you look up
Yeah.
Where the Elders Roamed on YouTube, that
Okay.
is a podcast that my friend Leper Koopa and I are doing. Leper Koopa is his online handle. That's what he likes to go by. We're 3 episodes in. We talk about what it's like to run esports organization in the amateur League of Legends scene in North America.
Very
It's
cool.
fun stuff going on there. I'm going to
Awesome.
start reverse plugging because I haven't been
Yeah.
doing that because life has been chaos. But this is good.
Oh
Good
man.
call out there, Steve. Cross promotion,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a good time. And so there, it's interesting. So you're talking about the leveling up or whatever, right? I think
Yeah.
leveling up is an interesting way to describe it because I feel like when you look at where that term comes from, like RPGs, like Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of stuff progenitors to that, um,
Hmm.
and that idea of like having moments of not clairvoyance, but just figuring shit out to a degree in life
Yeah.
is what those systems are meant to represent. And I think it's a fair way to describe some of the things in life where like I know for me when it came to the move that I did from Iowa to Texas and then what I'm going to be doing from here to Washington State to Seattle in a few
Hmm.
months, there one of the a moment for me that's kind of what I think you're referencing, and I want to hear what you had to say about it in a second. But for me, it was like when I was looking at all the crap that I had, all the stuff that I loved. Like I had this great couch, I have this great chair, I have this desk that I've had for years. I have all
Yeah.
these things that I have some big or small attachment to. In the process of like figuring out how I, as Tex, can let go of that attachment to better facilitate myself achieving the things that I want to achieve, the move and all this adventure that I want to do.
Yeah.
When I was able to peel back that onion, the first layer of that onion for the first time, it was euphoric. Not euphoric necessarily, but it was like it was it's hard to describe beyond and in a way to describe it is kind of like leveling up. Where I'm like, oh my goodness, I
Yeah.
have a new way of seeing the world and understanding myself and interacting with the world. I've developed a new talent, a new skill
Yeah.
that maybe I've had, but I've refined it to the point where I can now apply it like with regularly
Yeah.
with habit. But you wanted to talk. What made you want to talk about that whole idea of like
Oh, it was just
moments?
something that I had thought about recently and just kind of trying to trying to think of the right way to bring up the context, but
Oh, sorry if
you
I kind of
know,
sprung the recording on you. I'm sure you wanted some
no, no,
time
no,
to
no, not at
formulate
all.
those ideas.
It's something that I've been thinking about, but
You didn't see that. I just
clearly
spit
not
whiskey
enough.
all over myself.
to think about how I want, like, the context I want to bring it up in. I mean, it's just it's also tough to know if this is just a sort of um rebound state of being since certain events
Sure.
that shall not be named a
Of the
couple
place
years
that
ago
shall
now,
not be named?
roughly. No, 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 no,
Oh,
no. Of
okay,
an
gotcha.
event that shall not be named. Um, yeah, of just maybe returning back to more of who I am, and maybe it's a combination of that and just kind of taking some. I hate to use the cliche, but taking some time for myself to
Yeah.
figure myself out. That sort of thing, where it's kind of uh, I don't know, just yeah, it's partially not caring what people think, not in a not caring way, but not taking on other people's emotions and problems and all that. Which, if you're an empathetic person, can be pretty easy to
It's pretty
do.
tough, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not to say that you're not an empathetic person anymore. It's just a matter of you are a bit more reasonable and mature about where you choose to invest your emotions and energy
Yeah.
and all that, and picking your battles in a certain way,
Have you picked a battle that you felt was a have you made a choice like that recently that just, like, clicked for you, that felt good?
it's weird. It's one of those things that I feel like both uh happened spontaneously and didn't, can happen gradually. And it's certain people that I'm around that I may have um certain feelings would be stirred up being around, and I just kind of stopped
Oh,
having
yeah.
that affect me in the same way. I don't really know that. It's tough to know if you change or if it's somebody else or maybe a combination, but it's kind of just like, oh, like you said, you kind of just see the world in a different way.
Yeah.
And what's weird about it is that this new way of saying, it's not really a new way, but it's almost a default. It's what we are kind
It's
of
the
like
new default.
born with. Well, I think it's something we're born with. I mean, I think
Hmm.
a baby doesn't really. I've been watching a lot of Gabor Mate lately.
Gabor
I sent a
Mate.
link in the. Yeah, he's I don't know what
I
he
bet
is
I know that
technically.
because you've shared it with me before.
Yes, he's a doctor of some sort. I'd have to look up his credentials, but uh, he's been talking a lot lately about like childhood trauma and just ha- different habits that get reinforced. And
Mhm.
trauma doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, it can be something that is like, how do they put it? Capital T trauma, like a certain event that happened to you that, if you're abandoned by your parents, something like that is like trauma. But there's also certain things like just if you're hungry as a baby and your parents neglect to, feed you. His example was basically that his mom uh, gave him up during the Holocaust in order to basically save his life.
Mhm.
And so he argues that, as an infant and you don't know better and you're kind of given up by your mother, that has a certain impact of, you know, uh, changing your attachment and how you attach to other people, and taking on a certain sense of that you're not good enough, perhaps. And
Okay.
then, like in his case, he says, I became a workaholic because, always trying to prove yourself, sort of thing. But anyway,
Yeah.
circle back around. I, kids ultimately follow their gut feelings, and they kind of, that sometimes obviously gets them in trouble, but there's something to be said about their sense of freedom, probably, and not really caring a whole lot in the sense that not about caring for others, but they don't care what other people think about them. They don't care about there's no, societal norms. There's no nothing. They'll go run outside in their underwear with a diaper on their head and they'll be
Oh, sure.
giggling about it. And I think as we become adults, whatever that means, we tend to lose the sense of that. And so I feel like the default behavior is and should be something kind of returning back to that sense of not letting other people bother you, and whether that's something that somebody says directly to you or just being around certain people and them bothering you. It's like what is really bothering you about being
You
around
know,
these people?
you know what character in a popular cartoon that I love, at least broadly speaking. That's kind of that. This kind of reminds me of is Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. One of the things
Yeah.
about Eeyore is he's lethargic as all hell, and not just
Yeah.
in terms of like walking around and emotionality, but he also is like he's slow to respond. And I had a
Mm.
conversation with one of the staff that kid that helps me out with Revolution, college kid from Iowa State. He helps me out with Revolution, helps manage one of our teams. And at one point, it was more of a joke, but it kind of has helped him a bit. I think it helped. It's helped us navigate some communication. Like we get along well enough, but we're learning how to talk with each other, right? Like with anyone
Yeah.
that's new to that's forming a relationship in a working type environment, you learn how to communicate with each other. And one of the things I kind of told him was like, because there would be a challenge or an issue with the team at some point or another, um, and that's always going to happen. And he one time he responded with something that was like relatively passive aggressive, and it wasn't unfounded. It wasn't it wasn't the wrong response necessarily. Like it was valid. Like yeah, that's how I would
Mhm.
feel, and his feelings are valid and all that stuff in that circumstance. But one of the things I
Yeah.
told him was like, I get it. That's not going to help us move forward. That's not going to help us progress. And one of the things that we kind of jokingly talked about a little bit later was like, I was like, all right, I need you to just hesitate. If you're about to send a message, just hesitate a second before you just
Yeah.
hesitate and let yourself sit in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think what you were describing to a degree, with regards to our relationship to other people and the things that happen around us, whether at work or personal and whatever, it's like if you could just kind of hesitate a moment
Mhm.
and practicing that, it might make you feel like you look like an idiot too. Because that's one of the things I struggle with is that awkward silence of just like I'm staring someone in the face and just like thinking about what they
Yeah.
just said, and that silence drags out. And sometimes it's okay to just like let that be there and let
Mhm.
yourself process and just hesitate. Someone might say
Right.
something, it might make you feel really strongly, but you can practice that hesitation and that reactivity that can help navigate and give you that moment of breather to be like, how does this make me feel? And how do I want to let me make this feel? Or how do I process this whole situation? And with practice, I think that can help
Yeah.
achieve some of that. I don't know what to describe it, but something to what you're describing, where it's this
Yeah.
melancholy is not the right word, but this even rhythm, I guess. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
And it is, and sometimes I think nihilism is kind of part of it, but not really because that tends to get a negative connotation. Two thoughts kind of come to mind to what you were just talking about. There's actually, oh, I'm sure there's a whole cottage industry around. Not, I'm sure. I know that there is around the power of silence
Hmm.
and studies about what's his face, Steve Jobs. I think was
Oh,
one of the
sure, sure.
characters they described, but some sort of power in not speaking,
Mhm.
and taking the time to think. And while sometimes you might be perceived as slow, there is something to be said with certain, powerful people doing that, and people notice. If you're in a room with whoever it is that's a power person, and
A
they're
power
silent.
person. I want to have a
Yeah,
badge
and
that just says power person.
um,
Sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead.
the no, that's actually good. I should write that down and make those as a yeah,
Get
I'm actually gonna
stickers.
write that
Just
down. That could be one of our merch slogans. Was it Power Person?
power person.
Yeah, I like that.
Just have a little badge that
Um,
says power person.
yeah, so the other thought was
Excuse me.
I don't know if you've ever heard about the two types of thinking,
No.
quick
Tell me
thinking, slow
about this
thinking.
two types of thinking thing.
So what you just talked about just in my opinion describes something that's the two ways of thinking. I'm pretty sure there's a book about it, but one's quick thinking, one's um, slow thinking. And so I think they even categorize them as type one is quick thinking, type two is slow thinking. Doesn't really matter. Uh, it's about when you're quick to respond, that often for most people, that's a maybe a habitual response or some sort of,
Mhm.
um, if something comes right out of you, you've probably not taken the time to think
Or
through
you've
what you
been
would
through
say.
something like this before and you have some sort of
Sure.
reflex maybe. I know I have that
Yeah,
with
or somebody says something that you or that triggers you perhaps, and you're
yeah,
like, "Ugh," and you
for
just
this
say
I
something.
actually had a conversation with my mother earlier this week where she said something totally innocuous and like just like was basically like asking me if I could clean something up before I moved on to whatever the next thing I was going to do.
Yeah.
And the phrasing reminded me of a lot of like more passive aggressive interactions I've had in the past, but her tone wasn't passive aggressive. Nothing about what she said was passive. It was just a fine, pleasant thing.
Yeah.
Um, but and I had like this initial knee jerk, right? That was the quick reaction ever was just
Yeah.
reacting to what wasn't there, but what I was like used to hearing in that
Yeah.
from that series of words or whatever, right? And it's not necessarily like
Sure.
conditioned necessarily, but it's just like this muscle reflex. And
Yeah.
I didn't
Because
respond.
somebody before has said it in such a way that there was not necessarily ill intent, but there was a not very clear intent behind it, and so it
Yeah,
became frustrating probably for you.
yeah, and I had to like take a second and sit there and I kind of talked this out with my mom. I was like, man, I reacted at least initially in one way, and
Yeah.
when I look at and listen back to what you said, my reaction had nothing to do with what you actually said. Like you just asked me
Sure.
to do a chore, right? Like to take care of a thing that I agree was that like I understood why. I understood all the context of like everything was fine. It was just the phrasing of it
Yeah.
just reminded me of some past experiences that I've had a bunch that just I feel negative about. And
Yeah.
that's not on her for for anything. It's just something I had to sit and reflect on and realize, right? And
Yeah.
it's interesting how that quick thought that's just my personal recent example to what I think you're talking about,
Yeah.
where it's like these
It's
quick
definitely part of
things.
it. Yeah. Gabor Mate calls it about he talks about triggering and the analogy to a weapon and how somebody may have pulled a triggered you, but he says you're the one carrying the ammunition though,
Hmm.
you know,
Interesting.
and I like that analogy because it's kind of like, well, to what you said, somebody said something, and that is a trigger point potentially for people, but ultimately you decide how you want to respond to what was said,
Hmm.
and if it's something not probably ill-intended, and fairly benign words, and you go off on it, then you're the one carrying the ammunition. You're
Right.
the one that blew up. You're the one deciding that you reacted that certain way.
And you
And
gotta
some
if
of that
you're
comes from, again, like habits and certain lowercase t traumas.
Mhm.
So it's not to necessarily put blame on somebody for blowing up, but it's to say you should probably recognize that, again, you're the one carrying the ammunition. You're the one that blew up. Maybe take a look at that.
and there's an element where for me when you're describing that, what that makes me start to think about is not necessarily that it's bad to like react in a certain way. It's just allow the reaction to be mindful, right? That if someone hits a point of sensitivity or something, right? Something that they say, they do, whatever, and it makes you
Hmm.
respond, like initially respond in a way, and you look at it like, how is this response? Like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
I feel like there's probably circumstances where I may be like, oh no, no, my intense reaction to this is valid, and I'm going to follow through with
Yeah.
this. But it also
Yeah.
helps you navigate that I feel like that mindfulness can help navigate whatever situation comes from that. And I'm not going to sit here and say like be violent to someone, but it's just more like if someone
Yeah.
says something and you react with like, hey, that's not cool, or you get up in their face about something, you can by taking that moment to react to like why you're reacting, you can
Yeah.
be equipped to and this is just about introspection and reflection and some broad terms of mindfulness,
Yeah.
practicing mindfulness. I um I do I've been using that term a lot more. I've noticed mindfulness in the last year, and I don't know when I started using it or why, but in the last year, I've been trying really, really hard to like look at myself and my life
Yeah.
and what I do and how I am perceived by others and how I treat others and all these things and trying to just figure out how I can be the best version of myself to myself and to those
Yeah.
around me. And it's not always fun, nor does it always feel good, right? To
Change is uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
Most can be, anyway.
Well, it is inherently uncomfortable because change is just moving from somewhere you're not to from somewhere you are, right?
Yeah.
That's dumb. That's a dumb way to say that. It's so, but
I
it's
mean, yeah, sometimes it's, change for the better is good change, and so the it's maybe not uncomfortable, it's there's a certain level of, yeah, I can't think of a better word other than uncomfortable, but I feel like that still has a negative connotation, so maybe it's, there's a certain level of I wanna say anxiety, but there's still a lot of negative connotation to that too.
sure, sure.
Nervousness maybe or something, but it
Oh,
doesn't have to be well, and actually, from what I've heard, anxiety and excitement are 2 sides of the same coin.
okay.
If you think about it, and, it's a similar physiological response and probably even mental response, except for one is typically more positive and one's typically more
Right.
negative. Think
You
about it. There's the sort of like nervousness around
uh
it. There's the sort of anticipation around it. There's the unknown aspects of it.
yeah.
Um,
I get
yeah,
Oh man. I guess it's for me it's a matter of consequences sometimes when I think about what makes me anxious versus what makes me excited. And this is
yeah,
not so ubiquitous, but like if I'm excited about something, it might be about something that's unknown. It might be it's an event that's
mhm,
coming up that I know very much about. Like I know exactly how it's going to play out, but I'm excited for it. I got tickets
yeah,
to go see Formula One at the Circuit of the Americas later this year. I'm excited about that. I know how it's going to go. It's going
yeah.
to be fun anyways. Or the move to Seattle. Excited about it. No idea how that's going to go, but I'm excited about
Right.
it. But at the same time, for that one, I'm also anxious about all the logistics of going into contracting and self-employment in that way, right? And the
Hmm.
that makes me anxious and not nearly as
Yeah,
excited because the consequences of not doing it right are
yeah,
of how that unknown comes out don't feel great for me. And it's also
right.
I don't necessarily know if that's a categorical way to to understand this dichotomy between excitement and anxiety. But to me, my gut reaction is like it feels like it's a something rooted in the consequence of whatever the focus of these feelings is.
Yeah, and then ultimately it's still the kind of unknown because even if you know what's gonna, I mean, you can think that you know what's gonna happen
Hmm.
and be excited for something, but you still don't
Yeah,
quite know what's gonna
I
happen, and so it's still that it's moving into a different state of being
it's
and place and time than you're currently at
it's
in an area that
interesting.
you feel
Sorry,
and you're
sorry.
grounded in. But yeah, I was just
It's
rambling.
interesting to think about, and if if it's accurate, it's really interesting that excitement and anxiety are like physiologically the same emotions,
I've
and
heard it, and maybe I'm just repeating a lie, but I feel like it makes sense. I don't
I
know.
well I'll need to fact check myself after this,
Yeah,
but it's I mean that's like it kind of would make sense to me that it's just
yeah,
the same chemical process. But like because the difference when I think of, I'm trying to sit here and imagine myself in times when I've been excited and nervous, and even things about that I'm excited and anxious, nervous, anxious about coming up, and
yeah.
like the stomach, the feeling in my stomach, the butterflies faint or whatever, faint, no matter how faint
Mhm.
or grand they are, it's kind of the same feeling. It does feel kind of
Yeah,
similar, and whether that's just me ascribing it to it or not, it's interesting to
and
like,
maybe I embellished it a little bit, but yeah, I
well,
mean, and there's obviously extremes with excitement, anxiety, and a lot of times I think when people think of anxiety, think of it as an extreme,
mhm.
whereas excitement is maybe not as high caliber or whatever you want
Yeah.
to call it.
I I find that so fascinating, and I feel like there's something interesting to be said about like weaponizing your anxiety,
Yeah, well,
right?
and a lot of times people talk about you can try to reframe the anxiety as excitement or something like that, and then
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe it helps.
And that's one of those things too. Is like, how do you are we talking about clinical anxiety and excitement, or are we talking about? Thought I heard a noise. Are we talking about like just the more general, like how like I don't know
Yeah,
what I'm saying, but
if
clinical
you want to go
versus
down that
not.
rabbit hole,
Yeah, no, I think I'm
yeah,
gonna keep
this
with
is a
my
whole rabbit
like
hole.
our
Yeah,
vaguely pop psychology stuff that we're talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Not
Since
that.
we're both clearly qualified for that. I mean, you
Yeah.
more so since you're a biologist, right?
I have a this is something I like to say. I have a degree in biology. I am not a biologist. A biologist is someone who practices the science, who is a who's an act who's prac. It's like being a doctor, right? Like a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're practicing. Um, Not that I'm not leveraging the skills that I developed as a biologist, but I'm
Yeah. Well, like I
not.
said, you're closer than I am.
Well,
So
I'll take that one. I'll take that one. I did do 4 years of
yeah,
college to have this degree of closeness to understanding something vaguely related to
there you
biochemistry
go.
and physiology. I did take that class. Oh my goodness, one of my favorite um, classes in college was physiological biochemistry. BB&B 420 is what it was at Iowa State,
Jeez.
and
You said that's your favorite
that was
class?
one of my three favorite classes that I took. My first favorite was organic chemistry. Loved that. So much fun. Absolute blast. Took it with my buddy Michael. I
Now,
loved it.
let me ask, did you have fun because you took it with a friend or
No, I would
because
have had fun
you
anyways.
truly enjoyed okay.
Biochemistry, like I went out of my way to like just read the biochemistry textbook, or not biochemistry textbook. I did that too, but like to
Yeah.
read like the organic chemistry
I
textbook ahead
cannot
of time.
identify with that at all.
Um, that's
You're on
okay.
your own
Most
there.
people can't necessarily like. Organic chemistry sucks. It's really hard, and I'm not going to take that away from anyone. It was really tough, but it clicked for me. It's something I really enjoyed. I like to describe the course and learning about organic chemistry as like playing Legos, but chemistry.
Sure.
Whereas like Gen Chem is a lot of memorization and algebra. This was a lot more like concepts and applying. It was a lot more conceptual, and it made a lot more sense for me when I think about the things and the paradigms of organic chemistry and how you studied how like the genetics courses and the biology courses I studied and all that stuff, or I took, like the concepts were just so close together and I could apply them,
Mm,
so like they apply to each other directly, and that was a fun link that made sense for me. But anyways,
sure.
BBMB 420. That class, I I definitely had the prereq for that class, 100% when I went into it, and I took it, and when I walked into that class for the first day, I sat down middle, towards the back because I'm a good student, and eventually people start filing in, and then class starts. Now, by the time class started, about seven other people were in the room, which is probably the smallest class I'd ever been in at that point. I was a junior, first semester junior in college.
Mm.
Everyone in there was a senior, super senior, or grad student, I think. I should not have been there. And so class starts. I'm taking like the first part of the semester, first of three exams comes up. And I was studying my ass off, taking notes. I was in class every day, trying to pay attention, doing the best I could. Exam comes
Yeah.
back. We take our exam. I actually felt pretty good about it. I submit it. Exam comes back. Scores come back the next week, and the professor's like, "All right, so the class average, 89%. Great job, everybody." Gives me my exam back, 40%.
Oh man.
Class average, 89%. My score, 40%.
So what did you
So
do?
I went to the professor and I was like, I
I'm out of
don't,
here.
I'm so fucked, man. And he talked to me and he said, our goal is not to give grades, but to help people learn, but to teach people. So he and I worked together. He helped me, and we sat down and we I would go to him after class every day, and I worked my ass off and all this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And eventually I got a B minus in that class, and
Nice.
legitimately so too. Like I fucking worked my ass off.
Yeah.
But there's
It's
definitely some
impressive.
curving going
A lot of
on.
people would have just
But
dropped.
well, I didn't want to drop that class. I really liked it. It was for my degree, and I don't know. There was an ego element to it, right? I
Yeah.
didn't want that to like. I had dropped engineering calc 1 my freshman year because I had my first ever panic attack on the first exam of
Oh wow.
Math 165 at Iowa State, engineering calculus. I I had studied for that, and unlike BB&B 420, where I thought on that first exam I knew what I was doing, I knew immediately on the calculus exam I had no idea what I was doing. and I
You're not a
knew
big
like,
math guy?
well, no, I eventually took calculus for life sciences. I just was not prepared. Like it was so over my head, and the degree, the calculus for the engineers and the calculus for the life sciences was like the fundamentally the same, but it's engineers
Yeah.
and it's the life
Was
sciences.
yeah, yeah,
And having gone through we covered a lot less in terms of like the amount that we covered in life sciences calculus was like a fraction of the
yeah,
depth and the length of things that we covered that would have been covered in the engineering one.
right, because
Um,
they lean a lot more heavily on that for their profession. They need to
yeah,
dive deeper
we
into that
for
for
us they
sure.
just needed to get the fundamental ideas of calculus and the
Yeah.
slopes and all the things that I definitely still remember. I don't super well remember, but that's why I didn't take Math
Yeah.
165. Um, I did actually. That professor like saw me having a meltdown. And he like walked over. He's like, "Hey, you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know what's happening
I'm
tonight."
freaking out, man.
It was literally like that. It's like I've never had this happen to me before. I don't know what's happening. I couldn't get sentences out. And eventually we talked, and I actually like I dropped out of that class and I audited it, and so I would like for the rest of the semester,
Mm,
most of the rest of the semester, I didn't stick to it. I would go and just sit in the class and try to learn from it the best I could. Um, which I think helped me when I got to the life sciences calculus, where I had all these concepts that
yeah.
I was
Well,
privy to.
taking it twice.
Yeah,
I mean,
basically.
basically.
I also never took calculus in high school. I took pre-calc, which
Oh, yeah.
wasn't pre-calc. Like some of the concepts
That's
I
usually
remember.
more trigonometry, I think,
Yeah,
oddly
I mean
enough.
trig
Um,
like it felt like advanced trigonometry. It wasn't, if I remember
yeah,
correctly, it wasn't like actually addressing the concepts of calculus and the
right. It sets,
area under a
yeah,
curve and all
it's
that
really weird
bullshit.
because it sets a foundation. I feel like it sets some foundation, but not a strong enough foundation for calculus. But anyway,
Calculus
side
is
note.
not like difficult necessarily. It's
I
just
think it
another
is if
leap.
you,
It's a big leap
yeah,
from
and
like what you learn, and you need more time than just a couple weeks
yeah,
to get the fundamentals of it if you've never
it
interacted
takes,
with it before.
in my opinion, it takes more ability to, I want to use the word visualize.
Hmm.
Things like area under curve and all that. It's once you kind of get the fundamentals of, oh, you're just creating a bunch of rectangles underneath
Yeah.
area, and you're creating a formula for infinite rectangles or whatever it is. Um, sure, but if you can't like quite perceive that, and it's a different
I also
it's
didn't
similar to
get how that
geometry.
applied to anything I'd ever seen in my life. Like I could not
Oh
apply that
yeah,
to anything.
I mean physics for sure would probably use it. Engineering would
Hmm.
probably use it a lot, but yeah, I'm
And
a
I
graphics
needed, that's one of the
person.
things about life science
Not gonna use it.
calculus helped is they were like, it sounds dumb, but it was applied to the life sciences. So you would
Mm,
solve problems in a context of biology, chemistry, or like mostly biology and chemistry and ecological circumstances, right?
yeah,
As opposed to just the problem itself abstracted.
right.
Yeah, yeah, it was tough. One class that I thought was going to break me, but was actually super fun. I was attempting to go to grad school, and it was, oh boy, I was attempting to go into grad school. I was trying to go into bioinformatics. So I was taking a bunch
Yeah.
of courses. So bioinformatics is the juncture between statistics, computer science, biology. And
Nice.
I had taken my statistics. I had taken plenty of stats courses. Obviously, I had my degree in biology, and I'd say 9/10 of a minor in chemistry. Because I was trying to get my minor in the senior year, I needed to take quantum mechanics, which required
Mm.
engineering calc 2, and I was not going to do that. So I didn't get my minor in chemistry. Um, but anyways, for
Quantum
bio,
mechanics was not around when I went to college. Just gonna date
I
myself
might have
there.
misread the audit requirements for the minor, but I'm 90% confident it required quantum mechanics. That's interesting that it wasn't
Yeah.
around for when you took.
No, I was. I don't even think it was a thing. I mean, it might have been, but it just wasn't. Certainly wasn't a course to be
I
able to
think
take.
one of the courses I had to take, regardless, required me to take a prerequisite that I had learned after the BB&B 420 class that I should respect the need for prerequisites. That obviously I always had when I went to take my exams or take my
Yeah,
classes rather. But
depends on the class.
yeah. Uh, but anyways, I was discrete mathematics was the course that I had a lot of fun with. I ended up dropping out of the grad school
Okay.
stuff because I was overwhelmed, had no idea what I was doing. I remember I had taken some like visual basics in Java classes at Iowa State, and then I was trying to catch up on comp sci and math classes so I could try to do bioinformatics. And I was in data structures, the data structures class. And conceptually, like it was all object oriented programming and inheritance and this other shit, right? But then they were like,
Mhm.
"All right, for your first project, here's what you need to do, and you need to have like test coverage or whatever." And I was like, "What is a test? What are you talking about with tests?" And it's funny, me now looking back at that,
Yeah.
I couldn't write it. I mean, I could maybe write a test for Hello World shit. I don't know. Like at one point in time, I could have written a
Yeah.
test 2 years ago, but I can't write. But at least now know what the concept is. Me when I was 22 had no idea what the fuck was happening, and it was 3 days before the submission of that first exam, and I was like, I'm dropping everything. I quit. I can't do it. I don't know what's happening. I'm overwhelmed. I'm lost. This is not the right thing. I don't know what to do. I was not in a good headspace mentally.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot from that experience, and that ended up leading to me getting the job and having the success I'm having. Well, if you can call it success, but having the career I'm having. But discrete mathematics
Yeah.
was the other course I was taking alongside data structures. And discrete
Ah.
mathematics is cool. That was fun. Sets and logic and stuff like that. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, when you get into some like weird areas of mathematics, it becomes really interesting and really kind of fun. I mean, even
I
with calculus, it's like, solving the area under a curve thing.
mm,
Crazy that somebody figured out that that's the best way to do it. I mean, in hindsight, it makes sense. You think about it and you're like, "Oh, yeah, okay."
well, that's how I felt about discrete. You talk about this like idea of like leveling up in life and having
Yeah.
those epiphanies, those moments where you kind of break through a personal boundary of growth for growth. Discrete mathematics, when I was taking this class, it just like everything started clicking really quick. And I've just
Nice.
applied those concepts passively or actively ever since. Like everything when it comes to sets of information. And I remember I didn't finish that whole semester. So I didn't actually take all of discrete mathematics. I just took, before I dropped out, I took, some basics of logics and sets, right? Like sets of data and how
Mhm.
to enumerate and think of things as logic and sets through logical assignments of sets, blah blah blah. Again, half of a class, so not the most qualified here, but like still the fundamentals of that. Just like I when I see things and when I try to understand concepts as like just groupings of data and information, it has helped me
Yeah.
understand data as I have gotten into this career in software as a manager type, and I've needed to learn and talk to the engineers and stuff and learn how data is organized and how we organize data. The ideas that were given to me in the little bit of discrete mathematics classes I took
Yeah.
have applied here. And it's so
Right.
fascinating how we've built these conceptual building blocks through mathematics to just understand the world, not just as like with biology and chemistry we understand a lot of the fundamentals of like the natural world and the living things and non-living things and how all this stuff is like fits together in these systems, and mathematics seems to go like one level like above that more cerebrally where it's like this
Yeah.
there's these abstractions. It's one of the reasons I thought Foundation by Isaac Asimov, while kind of bland to read, was really fascinating because it took this
Yeah.
idea of math as understanding not just the facts of the universe, but the patterns of the universe and a way to express the patterns of the universe and understand that and then extrapolate outwards. That's so cool. That's so cool about
Yeah.
the levels of math beyond 1 + 1 = 2 and 1 × 1 = 1, right? Like the algebra, the trig, the calculus,
Yeah.
discrete, etc. is like it builds up to this level that is like, oh, I get why mathematicians see the world in this beautifully existential way that a lot of them do.
Yeah. And really, if you think about it, it's you know, one or more layers of abstracted beyond the way that people normally kind of see things and live their lives.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really weird. And the other thing is like, you've experienced something that I've definitely experienced before, but you've learned some certain fundamental truths about, at the very least, the way humans perceive the world.
Mhm.
It may not be how the world and reality actually are, but you understand a bit more about the human experience of perception. And you talk about categorizing data and information, just like how you see certain things. You see that play out and unfold in many different ways in front of you. I mean, just
Mhm.
the way we group and categorize within businesses, within political spectrums, or
Mhm.
whatever, even though that's not the reality of the world of the world. I mean, you are not this one thing or this one
I'm a
categorization. You're
superset of a lot of stuff.
right,
Right.
and it's I one of the things that I think I just inherently, like intuitively, I just sort of knew this, but it wasn't until I got older that I was able to understand it more and maybe formulate it into a thought or words. Was just that once you understand that, so like the classes you were talking about, discrete mathematics or chemistry or whatever, those are all human constructs. Like a bear out in the woods doesn't know anything about discrete
Oh, it's
mathematics.
well, there. Oh,
So
it's a nexus
once you un-
between human artifacts and the reality, and it's where they come together.
sure, the construct itself is created by humans. I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
discrete
Yeah.
mathematics, just the term alone, doesn't exist out of
Well,
nature. We come up with
the
it. We come
term
up
doesn't
with it,
exist, but the reality of what it's observing exists, right? Like
but
sets existed until
yeah,
before we gave them.
but
I would argue,
the
at
way
least.
that you understand it, the way
Hmm.
that things are named, the way things are
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
structured as far as classes, all that. Uh, I've heard from close people around me like, oh, I would never understand what you do, or
Oh,
I could never take a
absolutely.
chemistry class or whatever. And I'm like, you have to understand that this is all it all comes from a human,
Hmm.
and you're a human. So what makes
Uh,
you think that you can't understand
you
this?
absolutely can. It's not
You
divine.
can.
It's not. That's
Right.
and I know we've
It's
talked
not
a good a bit
outside
about.
the realm of human understanding
Yeah.
because a human made it. I mean, that's one. And then I guess my point is, once you understand that aspect about it, if you seek out another human that can very properly communicate that to you, you can understand those concepts. You might not become an astrophysicist, but someone can very easily explain that to you in simple terms that you get it. You know, I can't hear you. Are you muted? Hang on. Yeah, all of a sudden I couldn't hear you. I can hear on my speakers.
New audio device.
I can hear you now.
Switch. Okay. Okay. All right, we're back. Am I coming through? I was coming through the whole time on there. I was fidgeting a little bit with chords, and I think I fidgeted with the wrong chord a little too much. Um, but am I coming through okay? Oh shit, dude. Okay. I have to change my audio on my end because now it changed the output to my speaker, just like it did to you earlier. Okay. Everything's
You
back to
know,
normal.
Ghostbusters. What did you do, Ray?
But anyways, what I was saying was, oh, what was I saying? Oh, I was actually gonna ask a question. I
You're
was gonna
still
ask
a
a
little out
question.
of sync. Sorry.
Uh
Video and audio is still out of sync.
oh. Oh, I'm not gonna fuck with that. That's probably has to do with.
I can deal with it as long as it's recording fine.
Well, it's recording okay. It's a little out of sync, but
Okay.
we'll
All
survive.
right. Go
Um,
ahead.
so I was gonna ask the question of, do you think that so you said because a human being conceived of the idea that
Hmm.
because you're a human being, you should be able to conceive of it too, right? Like it just. Oh, this is
Yeah.
what I was saying before audio got weird. In the last many years, one of the things that I've learned in this profession, or working as a professional, is that it's not a matter of being gifted or not. It's a matter of practice and refinement and honing skills and practicing and not just learning but doing, right? It's learn and do and then learn and then do and have those two things feed into each other and be a part of the cycle of life
Yeah.
of its own way. And that is where you gain mastery. That is where you gain connection. That's where you
Mhm.
gain skills and all the things that we would otherwise ascribe to, like being gifted or divine or whatever the fuck you want to say, right? It's not, oh,
Yeah.
I could never do this. No, it's just this person has put through time, effort, and focus on this thing, and you haven't, and that's not good or bad. It just is, right? Like you've done
Mhm.
plenty of things that the person that you're talking about has not put the time and effort into. That's just how it is, right? It's a matter of time and
Right.
effort to achieve anything that any other person has done. We can all achieve it and then push those boundaries. One of the things that, sorry, I had so many thoughts from what you were saying before. Um,
Yeah.
one of the things that has been really fascinating to me um, about this epiphanies and these pushing the boundaries of things is how like it feels like with discrete mathematics and understanding like learning about chemistry and biology and then applying those things and then going and reading a lot and then going and traveling on these things, everything learning feel and then applying those learnings that in that purest simplest way of learning and applying and learning and applying. It feels like you're pushing the boundaries of the universe with every cycle
Yeah.
for me, and it's so
I mean,
fascinating to be on
you
that
are in a
edge.
way, right? I
Yeah,
mean, you are the universe, right? I
you
mean,
are your
the
own
universe
little
experiencing
universe.
itself. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Is that from something or is that you?
Yeah, I've heard it before. I
You
can't remember
you
who
are the
says that.
universe experiencing itself. Whoa, that gives me
Yeah.
butterflies, dude. That gives me butterflies.
Yeah.
That makes me feel things. Holy cow. Oh man.
Yeah, man.
But that's. Uh, I also think that because if something exists in nature, it's in the same domain that we exist in, and so it is there for us to understand it, right? Like in some
Yeah.
way, not necessarily. There's a
Knowledge is there for the
language,
taking.
yeah, and there's it's just it's figuring out how what's the language that we need to speak to understand it. Like what's the language that this
Yeah.
concept or this thing exists within, and how can we speak that language? Like geology is a
And
fucking fascinating field because it is literally learning how rocks talk. And rocks do talk. They have a language that we
oh man.
understand and communicate with. And it's
It's so much more than that. I mean, it gives you it also gives you a history of different events potentially. I mean, if you can understand how
it is
rock
literally
formations occur,
everything.
you know. Yeah.
My
Oh man.
my dad's a
Yeah.
geologist and I have absolutely learned so much from him and a fascination with the world around me, and it's just like through the lens that he's
Yeah.
not the most like braggadocious guy, but he's real smart cookie. So he shares a lot, and there's so much. It's such a cool perspective. That one in particular,
Yeah.
but
Man. Um
I love that idea of like pushing
yeah,
the
I'll
boundaries of the universe. Is what that was. It's such a. It's excited. It's
yeah.
I love getting excited about learning. It's one of the things in the last year I started reading a lot more. Oh, it's so much fun to just read
Yeah.
and then take those ideas from from fiction and fantasy. I've been reading a lot of science fiction, and then like seeing how like, allowing those to like be a way for me to understand the world around me. It's cool, man. It's cool.
I feel like
It's cool to learn,
I
dude.
feel like our universe, yeah, I mean like our universe, I don't know, this is sound kind of freaky deaky hippie speak, but I mean like I feel like our existence is kind of just a blank canvas. You know, we've got this open canvas here, and
Mm,
you and I and humanity has the opportunity just not just I mean I know that there are several other intelligent animal species, but we are uniquely blessed as human beings to be able to sort of make of the universe what we want out of
yeah,
it, you know, and to kind of squander that, to waste that opportunity feels wrong in some ways,
yeah,
you know. You can't get out there and experience you know what you can and learn what you can and just kind of I don't know, you know, like be a sponge and just take it all in. What I don't know. It just doesn't feel right.
it doesn't feel right. It
But maybe that's just
Be an
my
adventurer,
personal
passive or active. I think
yeah,
everyone should be an adventurer and go consume and learn and get excited about stuff. But we've been
yeah.
talking for 50 minutes, and I wanted
Holy
to,
smokes.
yeah, this went by quick. It's been nice to get back into it. I want to take some time here before we hit the hour mark and
Yeah.
just kind of talk about what are some of the things, talking about just doing stuff. Is there anything that you've been working on, big or small projects or anything like that?
Uh,
I
I
know
mean,
the hard part is that it's been the holidays and family and travel, so it's like nothing has
yeah.
happened. I'm
I
sure.
man, I don't know if I told you this or not, but I am creating a dashboard, like a custom dashboard for my home automation security stuff.
I think you mentioned something briefly about that because you were talking about how your like laundry room you have set up in a certain way, and you're talking about expanding that to a
Yeah.
degree, integrating it.
So I built I took I'll try to be as concise as possible, but I took a new framework, new to me, a framework language, whatever, that I didn't know before. I wanted kind of a sci-fi feel to it,
Okay.
like a Halo or a Tron sort of, where the elements kind of like come on and they're animated and they've got
Yeah.
that sort of
The,
teal, whatever the blue the
yep.
color
Yep. The
is.
Cortana blue kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I was looking up different ways to do that, and I saw a framework, which in coding what's the term?
Coding
Parlance?
parlance.
Uh, what's yeah.
Parlance seems
Anyway,
like the right term.
parlance.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can help out because somebody's already built a lot of stuff for you. Anyway, I wanted to build that. It's in a language or rather a framework that I didn't really know before, and I was like, I don't want to learn this. Like I was really dogging on it, and I was telling one of our coworkers, um, the one, the most tenured coworker, dev coworker we work with, I was like, man, this thing sucks. It was like day one or maybe day point five that I was working on this thing, but I'm like, I really want to use it. It looks really cool. I spent, no joke, the whole break until some days like 3 in the morning
Oh wow.
working on it because I wanted to make this cool
Yeah.
thing. And I tell you what, I learned a lot about that framework, and it's something that is pretty popular in the programmer dev world. So I'm somewhat, I'd say moderately familiar with it now to be able to
Yeah.
maybe even put it on a resume, just because I hunkered down and spent pretty much all my time, like almost all my waking time working on this thing. It felt like crack. I mean, I just could not
God, I
stop
love that
working on this
feeling though.
thing.
I love that
Yeah.
feeling. I just
I'm just
played a
sitting there
video
like,
game that
you
I was
know,
like that with. I mean, oh, isn't that great? I
but yeah, I've been working on
The
my
joy of
channel. We're
learning
trying
and
to.
applying and learning and applying.
Oh, yeah, that one was something different though. Like I said, it felt like it was like a drug. I mean, like
Hmm.
I have pretty good discipline in most arenas of my life,
Yeah.
but that one was just,
It just blew
I
all the
don't know.
discipline out the door. You're just sucked in.
Oh
That's
yeah,
gotta feel good.
but I've been trying to get more into, doing stuff with my channel. The thing about my channel that's cool is some of the stuff that I build actually helps clean up my house. It helps
Nice.
organize my
It's got a
house.
practical angle to it.
Yeah, and it's stuff that I
Not
know a
that
lot
it
of
isn't
people have
practical to begin
problems
with, but
with.
like two in one.
Yeah,
It was a twofer.
yeah. And so I've been trying to work more on that just because I've seen pretty steady growth with it, and I I really just want to get to the point where I'm able to do something entrepreneurial, and
Hmm.
that's my current, probably like closest means to be able to do that. And
That's
so
the
I
one that's
just,
got the most hooks and is kind of rolling further.
yeah, the most
Yeah,
potential. And so I just want to devote a lot of time into that and getting better at it and all that. So
absolutely.
that's what I've been doing physically speaking, but physiologically, mentally, whatever, is like I was on, like we started the episode, is this kind of the maturing a little bit and just trying to be present more, not ruminating over
Mm.
past experiences
Oh,
too much.
that that's something to
You
talk
know,
about next time is concept of being more present
yeah,
and practicing
and just
presence. What does that mean?
trying, yeah, and just trying to be, like I had mentioned before, some people that maybe gave me grief when I was around them, just saying like, why do I have to feel that way? Like I'm just gonna be myself and happy, and stay in
Yeah.
my own lane in my own space. And Man, it's I'll tell you what, like it's made life better. I wouldn't say it's made life a pure joy because I like being kind of just like, yeah, I'm cool. You know, like you can't maintain pure joy all the time. It's
You
unrealistic.
gotta, yeah, you gotta be able to accept the ups and downs in life, and not stigmatize either one. Not try to unnaturally maintain joy out of fear
Yeah.
of not having it. Right? If you are afraid to lose
Yeah.
something, well, you've probably already lost it. Well,
Yeah.
I've
What are
been
you up to?
I'm working
Your
on
turn.
doing some woodworking. Actually, I carved a spoon today.
No,
I used my
from a
I worked with
bigger
my.
spoon.
What'd you say?
That's a Simpsons reference. I
Oh
said
no,
you carved the
I've
spoon from
watched
a
almost
larger
no
spoon.
Simpsons in my life. Um, but no,
No, it's yeah, it's a good one.
my dad helped walk me through some of the tools. I've used them in the past when I was younger, but not for a decade or more. But you know, table saw,
Okay.
chop saw, variable saw, and then
Oh
I've got
man.
like a carving kit, like a wood carving kit that I have, and some stuff. And I carved a really crappy spoon. I'll send you a picture of it. But it's the first of many, and I learned a lot. Oh, the talking about like epiphanies and like leveling up. I took the variable saw with the blade because I had the shape of the spoon mostly cut out, and I needed to chop away the width by the stem, the block that was by the stem. And I was
Sure.
like, I don't know how to do this with the stuff because saws. If you don't know this, I don't have. Oh, so I don't have like the bandsaw thing that you can like just do that number with. Um,
Or a scroll saw would probably be a little bit better for
I
you
don't
for
have any of that. I just have things that go
fine
linear.
woodworking.
We have
Yeah.
things that just go linear. So what I did was I took the variable saw and I cut uh, little divot or little lines into it, and then I took a chisel and a mallet and I just popped these thin bands that I had cut in off. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'd done that at one point in a past life, like when I was in Boy Scouts or whatever. I had done something similar, and it just like clicked. And I was like, oh shit, knock that in, chisel it away, sand it down, carve it in. Boom,
Yeah.
I've got the stem of a spoon. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. And it's just this
Nice.
really crappy spoon. And the best part was I was trying to do that without cutting it, without like cutting the guides and like making it weaker so it could pop off easy. I took a section that didn't have the cuts
Yeah.
and I was trying to mallet it away and just broke off a whole half of the spoon, the bowl of the spoon. I was like, ah, so that's why I do this. Like learning through failure was a lot of fun there. Because
Yeah.
I let go of this thing needing to be perfect and it was just a thing that I was working on. And when I broke it, that's okay.
Yeah.
I learned
You were
why I
just
broke
kind
it,
of
and
toying with it. Yeah.
yeah. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
That and I'm
That's
reading a
cool.
bunch and I'm cooking a lot of food. I
Nice.
haven't gone out to eat. I haven't spent food on fast food or anything all week. And I've been eating a lot of good food, a lot
Nice.
of veggies, a lot of fruits. It's been good. I
Good.
and we'll
You
I'll
saved a
check in.
lot of money not going out.
Oh man. Yeah, not paying rent, not eating out of food, saving up for that Seattle life. I'm gonna live in that closet under the stairs like Harry Potter, man.
Oh yeah.
Um
Yeah, you better save.
but yeah, no, that's what I've been doing. Is there anything
Nice. I'll have
before
to
you
feature you on my channel.
one day, oh, dude, you could be like,
Speaking
"Hey,
of
look how
woodworking.
you think my stuff's good. Look how bad his stuff is. It'll make you love what I've got."
The crossover episode.
But
What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say, any last thoughts before we? I think it's a good time. We're just about an hour in. I think it's a good time for us to wrap before sending this on to the YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know. What did we what did we start with? What was our
We were talking
you
about
know?
just like maturing and hitting those epiphanies in life, and like
Yeah.
kind of hitting those moments where all of a sudden you just feel like you've gained a new skill, but not necessarily like as much of a I know now how to type or do this like kick a
Yeah.
soccer ball or anything, but more this like I know how to be a more holistic person, right? We talked about that leveling up
Yeah.
of sorts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I
It
don't really
takes
want to say much because there's a lot to say.
there's a lot to say. Well,
Yeah.
we'll return next week on another episode of
Yeah.
where do we go from here, or maybe another name at some point. We'll figure it out. But anyways, this has been
Yeah.
I think
Who
our
knows? Where
sixth,
do we go
fifth, or
from here?
sixth episode at this
Yeah.
point. Seventh, maybe I don't remember.
With
Um,
that. Yeah, man.
I need to check it up. But Steve, it's been great. I've been Tex. This has been Steve. Thank you
Yeah.
for watching, and we will see you guys in a week. Take care.